Welcome, friends and spiritual rebels. Today, I want to talk about a probably very divisive topic: depression. I bring this up because it's something that quite a number of people experience, and it's tied to emotions, but in many ways, it's not an emotion. If anything, true depression, is the absence of emotions, or at least the absence of feeling or sensing the emotions that you have. Now, I know that there are many in the medical field that tie depression to imbalances in the brain chemistry. However, I would argue that if there are imbalances in the brain, that it is not the cause of depression, but rather the result of an imbalance in spirit. Because depression at its core is a spiritual problem, not a chemical problem. If you want to look at the solution to depression, you have to understand its cause. Often depression is tied to sadness. If that makes sense. Sadness can lead into a state of shock. It can lead into a state of pulling back from the world. But what causes it? Sadness, as we've already discussed, is when you have a hole in your aura, when you've been connected to someone or something, and you have gripped onto that or incorporated that connection so deeply within you that when it is taken away, its absence tears a piece of you with it, creating a hole in your spirit, your astral, and sometimes etheric body as well. This makes it very difficult for you to cycle the vital energies, the spiritual energies, the emotions that bring vitality and strength to your physical and emotional, mental condition. As that energy wanes, as you use up the stored energy, if you don't have a support system, people in your life, or a strong connection to the natural world, or to celestial allies who could assist in bringing more energy to you as you struggle to patch and mend what is broken, you could find yourself falling into sadness, and as your energy dips lower and lower, into depression. You need that flow of energy to facilitate your life, to take action. Now, depression, as I've said, it's not an emotion in itself, but rather the absence of emotions. And when you don't have emotions, when your emotional resonance is stilled, you can't prioritize your life, what to do next. You cease to care. You cease to connect with things. You cease to have the ability to connect and cycle energies within the web of the weird, the web of life. And so you wind up in a situation where your initiative, your desire, your hope, all things that move us toward the future and anchor us to the past fall away. Thus, the desire for continued living falls away, as you simply do not care, not about anything. If you can't summon the energy around you to fight this, and it's a losing battle if you can't patch the hole that has been rent in your spirit. It's a race against time, a race you could lose if you don't have some plan of action. Now, normal depression will run its cycle within 3 months. But that's only if the depression is caused by spiritual constipation. I don't know any other way to put it. Depression can be caused by a lack of vitality, but in many ways, there are other means that create that lack of vitality. The hole in your spirit is one of them. But handling too many emotions at once and creating a bottleneck because you can't process them quickly enough to allow the flow to continue is another way that depression can manifest. If you are hit by so many different emotions, especially if they're strong emotions, which tragedy can supply, you're attempting to deal with an emergency. So you pull different and sometimes conflicting emotions through you to handle a crisis. They can bottleneck in you, and they can prevent you from the continued flow from source down through you into the web of life and back. They can cut that off. Again, spiritual constipation. In that case, the 3-month period in a quiet place away from stimulation that allows you to process through the backlog of emotions to get that flow going again, that will work. But in the case of a hole in your usually heart, because that's where most humans manifest, in that case, you need to take some action, something to fill that hole, something new, a new project, a new life, a new love, something that brings you happiness, something that reconnects you with the world, and something that fills that space. There is one other very common thing that can cause depression, and that's when you or someone else, perhaps well-meaning or perhaps malevolently, throws constrictions, a binding around you. Now, in the case of doing it to yourself, we call this a warding or a shielding process that keeps something threatening or dangerous or harmful to you away. In the case of someone else, it could be somebody trying to stop you from doing something or seeing something or expressing something, perhaps somebody who sees you as a threat or competition, or perhaps it's a family member, very well-meaning, attempting to push you into a different focus or a different action. In the case of constriction, it doesn't necessarily lead to problems unless it's long-term or unless it's very heavy, very strong. Too much of that will cut you off from source, both the source of all life, but also the life around you. And when you get cut off from that for a prolonged period of time, the energy or the fuel that drives you will curtail. It's just like a siege. You can siege yourself, you can hide behind a fortress, but sooner or later you're going to have to come out. No man is an island, and no island is completely self-sufficient of all things, especially in a crisis. Sooner or later, you're going to need to reach out and pull in. And when you do that, the walls come down. So, depression can be caused by these different situations, more often than not. And what you're going to need is to solve the problem and to bring once more the energy through to you. Now, Yes, I have been told that uh, poisoning can cause this depression, um, bad food, food with no nutrition. Yes, in all of those cases, you can experience dysthymia, which is sadness, lack of energy, depression, which is a severe loss of energy, to the point where you don't want to move, you don't want to do anything, you are paralyzed. However, in the case of malnutrition, in the case of where you have an illness of the body for whatever reason, um, that is usually fairly easily seen and dealt with by medical means, detoxing in one case, and correcting the fuel that you bring into your body in another. What I'm talking about is the problems that may not be as obvious to the physical world, spiritual problems. And very often, true depression, catatonic depression, deep depression, it's the result of that. And very often, we will require others to help pull us out of that. And it's unfortunate that there aren't enough people, not enough healers, at least in our society, that understand the true root of depression and how to manage it. Something for you to think about, and welcome to the woods.